Hey everybody, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and today I'm doing a review of Return to Dark Tower. And no disclaimer for this one, I borrowed my friend's copy of the game. And at the end of the video, I'll also discuss my feelings on the 2 expansions that are currently available for it. So Return to Dark Tower, which is a new game based on the original Dark Tower, is a competitive or cooperative, I'm going to focus on the cooperative and solo play, of course, game, where you are adventuring around as 1 to 4 characters, clearing corruption from the land in the form of skulls that could eventually blow up these buildings and cause you to instantly lose, battling varied monsters in app-driven combat, and working to complete your main quest to bring out the big boss in modular gameplay so you can defeat them and win. So let's discuss 5 key things to know about Return to Dark Tower. So starting at number 5, the least important to know, but still important or I wouldn't mention it, is the modular nature of the game with quests and adversaries. So there are 10 main goals in the game that'll change up the main objectives you have to achieve to actually bring the monster out. These will generally give you an ally who will help you out with special powers, and side quests you can complete that'll earn you quest items to help even more. Then you also get to pick from a bunch of different adversaries who have their own negative events and side quests to complete. And for a bit more variety, at each of the 3 levels of minions, you have 4 different types of enemies you can face off against. Now, some of these elements can have a bigger influence on the game than others, like some adversaries will actually restrict your travel with giant tokens, while some enemies like Shadow Wolves, you just don't stay next to them and they literally have no impact on the game otherwise. But still, it does feel consistently fun and varied to change up the modular options you have in the game. Next, for number 4 point, I have another pro with some caveats, and those are the characters and items you can level up into in the game. So in the base game, you have 4 different heroes to choose from. They each have a special once per turn banner action. They start out with 2 unique virtues that gives them special powers, and they can level up into more depending on their class, so nice variety there. But beyond that, you can earn potions that give you one-off powers, gear items that give you consistent bonuses, and a bunch of treasures that can give you bonuses in combats and quests, but also have special powers that can sometimes combo into crazy abilities. So it's definitely fun to try out the different characters, and even when you play the same character, you're going to get different other items, and they're going to be differently useful based on the enemies and quests you're doing. My one big caveat, though, is that the virtues don't seem well balanced against each other. In some cases, it's extremely obvious which one you should take first every time you play that character. And not all of the characters, even in the base game, are as consistently fun and useful to play as in general. Next to number 3, I've got the bling of the game, the giant Dark Tower itself, as well as the app integration, and this is a mix for my taste. Taking away the fact that you need to use a battery-driven tower and you need to use an app, which is already going to be a deal breaker for some people, I think these generally work well. The tower itself is basically a dice tower you drop these skulls into, and it will randomize when they come out and in which direction. A little bit like if you've seen these old games, Wallenstein or Shogun, where they would kind of keep some cubes in the game and let other ones out, or Harrow County had that mechanic too. It also rotates the mechanisms inside to shake the skulls loose or send them out in unexpected ways. And it'll pull off these little doors throughout the game to reveal glyphs, which can negatively affect your actions or shoot out more skulls. So there are some dynamic things going on here. The big negative, of course, is that it's a giant tower. It makes the box way bigger. It makes the game cost a lot more. You need to deal with batteries and connecting it through Bluetooth to your device. And maybe the most annoying thing for me is that when you're playing the game, you can't see what the heck is on the other side, especially playing solo where you got to kind of pay attention to everything. It can be pretty annoying. But I can't underestimate the toy factor of the tower and the lights and sound effects it has coming out of it. It certainly made my kids way more excited to try the game. The app is also well done. It's attractive. It's got nice sound and music. It randomizes a ton of enemy spawning and events and quests and all kinds of things that would have been a hassle to keep track of and would have demanded a bunch of extra card decks. And it's not an app that's in your face all the time. Yes, combat and quests is handled through it, but you are still moving on the board and paying attention to things there. The app doesn't know where enemies are or where you are, so you don't have to track every single little detail. So if you don't absolutely hate apps in games, I think it does the job. My number 2 point for Dark Tower is the crisis management, and this is another mix for my taste. So I already mentioned, but the tower is spitting out skulls pretty much constantly, and you need to clear them away from buildings because if the skulls run out, then you lose, and also they'll eventually blow up buildings and hurt you in other ways. And then also, enemies are piling up, and if you leave them too long, the app will make them get stronger, and they'll do nasty things in their areas, like adding skulls, hurting people, that kind of thing. So a lot of player turns are going to be spent clearing out skulls, getting rid of enemies, which on the negative side, and this is where the mix comes in, can be a little bit dull. The combat is pretty exciting, but clearing away skulls is never that interesting. And I'll highlight, especially with higher player count games, we're going to have played this with 3 or 4 people, 1 or 2 players will often get kind of hedged into just clearing away skulls because their character is better at it or because they have a special ability that works with it. And that can really make the play a bit dull for those players specifically. But on the positive side, something I think was really clever in the game design is the reinforcement mechanic, which lets you interact with the building on your turn in addition to clearing away skulls or fighting with an enemy, which can let you level up, get potions, get gear, get treasures. So even while you're doing the somewhat monotonous task of keeping everybody alive, you're still getting stronger and getting more cool toys to play with, so that helps a lot. And finally, my number 1 point for Return to Dark Tower, my favorite thing about the game, is the combat and dungeon system and how they use advantages. So when you go into combat, you'll have a certain number of advantages based on your character or your items, and you'll be facing in combat a certain number of enemy cards, in dungeons a certain number of rooms. And each of them will have a penalty for you to pay. Like here, Beast Frenzy says I have to lose 10 of my warriors. And I can either tank that, or I can spend some of my advantages to make the penalty go down. Look, if I use 1 advantage, now it's only 5 warriors. If I use 2 advantages, now I'm gaining 5 warriors. But the problem, the excitement, the tension, the choice is in the fact that you'll generally not have enough advantages to make every card or room go your way. And if you spend all your advantages on one card, you might find out that the next card is really terrible and has a terrible effect you can't deal with. So that excitement, that tension, that feeling of not knowing when you should be cautious and when you should take a big risk on a given card or a given room with your advantages is a fantastic system, my favorite design element in the game by far, and something I would honestly love to see other games using too. So you might want to check out Return to Dark Tower if you have kids or people who are going to be wowed by the toy factor of the tower. If you want a tense crisis management game that has a lot more theme and character and variety in scenarios and powers than something like Pandemic. Or if you just want a fantastic combat system, because again, I love this advantage system so much. On the other hand, you might want to avoid this one if you don't want a super expensive game that's still somewhat simplistic in its gameplay options. If you don't want a giant battery-operated tower, if you don't want to use devices in your games, or if you don't want a lot of randomness, because sometimes the game will give you the exact right treasures, the exact right events, and sometimes everything will go the opposite way. And to talk briefly about the 2 expansions that are available so far, again, there's an Expeditions one coming soon-ish. The Alliances expansion, not my favorite. It has 2 new characters who are pretty cool, a new deck of treasures you can combine with the base game or keep separate, a whole bunch of fun new companions, although they don't have quests associated with them, nastier skulls that get added by the app into the tower. These are pretty fun, although they can also be very challenging. And the main event here, 4 guilds that are double-sided with different powers. You start out being in a very negative place, having annoying penalties applied to you, but if you can put the time in to build the guilds up with guild quests and such, then they can eventually give you a bonus. And again, this is the main event of the expansion, and it's also the element I like the least, because I don't enjoy how negative the guilds are at first, and it can take a while to get all of them even up by 1 level to where they're not hurting you that much. Just not a fun element for the game, at least for my taste. But the Covenant expansion, this one's amazing. If you can find it, definitely get it. It's got 4 new characters, and at least 3 of them are pretty fun. It again has a whole new treasure deck you can mix and match or keep separate. It also, one of my favorite things, doesn't add any new companions, but it adds a new quest for every single companion in the base game. So you go from 10 quests to 20, which none of the other expansions do. There's also a new mechanic where wastelands spawn on the board, stopping your movement if you move into them. They can be a little bit annoying, but honestly, they make the tactical puzzle of moving around the board a lot more exciting and not as obvious and easy. There's some new black doom skulls that can't be cleared away. Besides that, they're not as cool and interesting as the colored skulls in the Alliance expansion. Then the biggest new element are the monuments. There are 8 of them, although only 4 are used in a given game. They give you a little extra side quest to complete no matter where you are. Whenever you do them, you add a cube to the monument, and then once it has 3 cubes, if you take an action, you can flip it to its completed side, where it will have little special events in the app, and also give you a much more powerful reinforcement option than you ever have in the game otherwise. And also, while I'm not too much a fan of blinged out pieces, the monuments themselves look awesome. And yeah, combined with the new quest, combined with the wastelands, this makes the tactical puzzle of the game and the variety in play way, way higher. Awesome expansion overall. That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Hope that was helpful, and I'll see you at the next stop.